Hello, friends. How are you? Happy Women's Day. I'm coming on right now just to speak to you a little bit about what the heck is going on. We're seeing a lot of garbage in politics, globally, wars, destruction. People are suffering. People are really suffering. And everywhere we look, there's division. And, if we begin to ask ourselves, why is all this division going on? I think we need to look at the media, first of all, the mainstream. Today's Women's Day, for example, the first Women's Day was celebrated in Russia in 1917 by a number of women. It was a beautiful event. And then in 1928 to 1953, there was between 40 and 50 million Russians murdered through the gulags and the nightmares that went on in Russia. We need to stay open at these times. And above all, we need to not get into division. If you look at the mainstream news today, every single article I looked at around Women's Day ended, even in the little subtitle, with a negative. Oh, so there's still inequality and all these other things. Of course, they never tell you the whole truth. These things are written specifically to divide people. Women and men, we need each other, all of us. And this division is killing us. It broke our hearts during COVID. Many of us are still divided from people we used to be close to. Why? Because of what we were told. There was a massive war, propaganda, a war of the mind. And so going forward, we have to be very careful what we believe, especially on mainstream. It might seem unbelievable, but it's really not. And I think it's also really important we look at history. In the last century or so alone, millions and millions and millions of humans killed by their governments. And we don't know exactly what's going on right now, but there's one thing for sure, and that is that there's a lot of stuff coming out of the shadows. We might ask ourselves why. The frequency on the earth is going up. That means the vibration is increasing. It's bringing more love and more light on the planet, and it's forcing the shadows out. There is a group of people behind the government that control everything and control our leaders. And a lot of our leaders are unethical, probably sociopathic. The way out of here is probably not through politics. It may be, especially at a civic level. I think they work really hard. But when you get a really good guy in as president or prime minister or something, they're usually taken out. And we are seeing global, big national corporations all kind of merging together, and it's concerning out there. The electromagnetic frequencies are unhealthy. We are being exposed to a lot of unhealthy things. Who out there is not feeling real well these days? How many people do you know getting sick? How many people do you know who have died in the last year or two? It's very concerning. And in order to get through this time, and we are bringing in a more beautiful world. That is what this frequency increase is about. But it also means about not allowing ourselves to be so scared by the propaganda that we go along with everything the government suggests, or we will leave a prison for our children. They're bringing in a social credit system like they have in China, here in Canada, and every country in this world. But they can't if we say no. This digital ID they're bringing in, they'll make it sound it's for your safety, it's for your benefit, it'll keep you secure, it'll be green. It's going to lock you into your homes in a very short distance from there. Only if you obey everything. If you don't get your next booster, or you decide you don't want your child having this or that, your bank account could be shut off. Your health care could end. And if you don't get your next booster, it will. So you've got to go along with everything. This is not the world we opted into, right? But let's not fight each other. If you're someone who's been aware of this corruption for a long time, please be gentle on your neighbors. There's a lot of people having major cognitive dissonance. There's a lot of people who do not know about history because our governments have not taught it. And now they're using cancel culture to try to prove that we never had racism and that we, taking history out. Try finding out the truth about Mao's regime in China, or the truth about Stalin's regime or Hitler's regime. It's not easy. You might get a little more information on Hitler, but honestly, it's not good. Hundreds of millions of humans killed by their government the last year, or not last year, the last 100 years or so. About 100 million more. And a lot of them were really, and it began through, a lot of it began through a democracy going wild. When the collective's rights become far more important than the individuals, we have to be careful. Because they'll always make it that way, because it gives them more power, more funding. Guys, we have a beautiful world. We have a beautiful world to protect and love. Let's be kind to each other. It doesn't matter who's vaxxed or who's not. It was never about that. It's always been about control and power. And the new things coming in, the smart cities, the 15-minute cities, are because you won't be able to drive across town. They will try to take away your property for a green new world. But why is our world not green? Why is our environment polluted? It's not because you and I drive cars. In fact, the extra carbon in the atmosphere is helping plants to grow. What is really destroying the earth is the pollution in the soil, the pollution in the air, and the pollution in the waters. And if you're wondering about the electromagnetic frequencies on health, go to Google Scholar and look up microwave radiation, 5G, and look at all the stuff. There are thousands of peer-reviewed published papers. That means they cannot be wrong. It's not trust the science, the opinion of one person. That's what happened in Mao's China. The opinion of one person called it all. This is what we're going to do. And when his elected officials that disagreed with him and stood up for people's rights, they were murdered. And so everybody else got so scared they did whatever they could to bring in his policies. The great leap ahead into hell. And this, I'm not coming on here to make this negative. I love you guys, every single one of you, vaxxed and unvaxxed, Democrats and Republicans. I am not a political person. This is not about politics. This is about love. This is about bringing love, because that is what the new frequency is. It's a love vibration. Astrologically, our Earth is in a different place now, and we're able to absorb more love on this planet. The number one thing we have to do is stay open and speak our truth. Do not censor yourself. Do not be afraid. All these rules we've been programmed with in the Matrix, things like, oh, be nice, don't make them feel uncomfortable. We've been educated since the time we were young to be fearful. When I was a little girl, I was taught to hate the Russians. Every night, Walter Cronkite would talk about how they were going to blow us up. And in elementary school, as a little girl, I was taught to hide under my desk in case the bombs went off, so it would help us to survive them. This programming starts very young, and it is very hard to wake up from. And anybody out there who's awake, who knows what's been going on or whatever, we have to build bridges with every single one of our sisters and brothers. And if they didn't know what was going on, or they still don't know, let's leave them in peace. The people who aren't awake yet or are waking up now are going to have a much tougher time of it than those of us that have been awake for a long time. Do you remember the grief we felt when we realized, oh my God, they're trying to hurt us. They're trying to maybe kill us. This has been a horrible time for everyone. Everyone. Nobody's had it easy. And those of you that are just starting to wake up now, be gentle on the others that stood their ground and spoke about the potential dangers. I have people that I love that have not seen me or been willing to speak to me since I began to speak out. And I don't know 100% what's right, but I do know a few things. And one is that we have to love each other more than anything. We have to build bridges. Don't knock anyone down. None of us are better than anyone else. We're just beautiful beings of light that are trying to find our way, but we have been held down for millennia. There's a group of people, beings behind our government that control everything. And I'm not going to get into the details here. It's way too crazy and way too deep. And perhaps down the road, we'll go down more rabbit holes around that, if you're interested. But for now, know that they have been basically like parasitic beings feeding off of us, and we've been slaves. And now we're waking up, and we're taking back our power, and we're saying no, and we're opening our minds even when it hurts, and we're doing research. We have to do our due diligence. We can't afford not to face what's going on. A good friend of mine said to me the other day, I have to see hard facts, when I have shown her hard facts many times, but she doesn't want to see. It's not easy to see. It's not easy at all. It's horrible. And for those of us that have known for a long time and are watching loved ones get sick, really sick, or die from decisions they made, this is incredibly painful. It has been very painful. But if we all stand together and we all say no more, this will stop. It has to. If we go along with their schemes and their digital ID, and the digital ID will be embedded eventually. It'll start as a card, and if you don't have that card, you won't be able to do almost everything. And then it will eventually be embedded, a part of your biology. And you'll use that to get into your stores, your healthcare, your bank accounts. But that's also very unhealthy, very unhealthy. And it's programmed, it knows you by every keystroke you do on the computer. Your information is all carried, and it's been for this time. And some of that information will go into that chip. And if you pass on, they've got access to your bank accounts and your passwords and everything. Like it's really, we don't know exactly what's going to come down the road, but we can't afford to leave an Orwellian nightmare for our children. And if you don't know about George Orwell, he wrote some great books, Animal Farm, 1984. I read it in high school. Why our children have not read these things, and the Gulag Archipelago, Solzhenitsyn, fantastic book about what went down in the Soviet Union. We need to know history to prevent spiraling down into the mistakes we've made in the past. And we're at a turning point. And it's incredible because the frequency is going up. But we have to stop these EMFs, and we have to be there for our young people. The mental health conditions are out of control. Homelessness. We need each other. Don't buy into anything that is putting one against another. There's no saviors up there in the politicians. You know, there's no we have a spark of divinity within us. We are our own saviors. All the great teachers that came before us, Jesus was a teacher of love. He taught love. And he taught us how to develop that spark of love within us so we could shine like he did. And it starts with being true to ourselves and speaking our truth. If we look at the greatest leaders ever, Martin Luther King, Gandhi, look at, they stood their ground at whatever cost. And unless we want to bring in a really awful future for our children, we're going to have to start. I'm sorry to deliver a heavy message, but it's really time, because we're going to start seeing in the next few months. If you think I'm going overboard, well, just watch. People like myself who've been speaking out for a long time, we will be censored. I mean, we already are censored, but we will be taken off social media. You have to have a digital ID to get on social media or internet. Imagine what that's going to do for all of those people that work from home that don't go along. So there comes a time where we have to say enough. They also want the digital ID to control where you can shop, online or entering stores, bank accounts, healthcare. It just goes on and on. Pension. And if you think this sounds too much, go to the World Economic Forum. I could have probably shared screens here with some charts, but I'm not going to bother because I'm not organized on it at this moment. But if you go back on some of my posts in not that far back, you'll find the chart of the World Economic Forum. And maybe I'll actually include it on this post. I'll put it in the comments so you can take a peek and see what I'm talking about. And if you go and you read in their fine print, Klaus Schwab wrote a book as well. The Great Human Reset or something. I can't remember the name. But there's also a commercial out that says you will own nothing and you will be happy. They want us eating bugs. Bugs are not good for the human digestive system. They make us very sick. While they fly in special jets everywhere, this is the problem. It's the corporations that are causing the pollution. It's not us. It's not your human brothers and sisters. This is why we have to hold hands, and we have to do it peacefully, with peace. We can say no, but we don't hurt anyone. That takes us down to the old violent frequency that we're moving out of. We have to move away from that. We have to move to love, which means doing the right thing from the heart. So I hope you follow your heart. And I hope you take this with the love with which it's meant, so that we have a truly beautiful future for our children. Thank you for listening. Janetta Jane, and I'm going to put my glasses back on because sometimes I've shut down the wrong thing. Stop recording. Here we are.